Okay, in the last video we also talked a little bit about the magneto and the carburetor, which we started to clean up. I only showed the magneto just before taking it off the engine, but this is what it looks like now. So we've obviously wire brushed all the outside, we've gone all through the inside as well, had everything out, cleaned it all up. Pretty good inside, not too bad at all. We've just put some oil in these little cups on the side, and yeah, that's generally all we've done. And then we've painted the cover on the back, the clips, and of course the two stop switches in the BMC Mowog green. The one side clip for this side was broken, so we've removed that, and we'll have to be on the hunt for another one soon. But that shouldn't be too hard to find. I think I know the person who I might contact for one of those. Sent me a coil a while back, so he might have a clip for one of those mags. And the carburetor we've also gone through and cleaned up. It was fuel bowl was pretty bad, quite a lot of stuff in it, but again everything else was pretty damn good. So we've had it all apart, had the choke out, cleaned all the choke butterfly. We didn't have the throttle shaft out because it's pretty good and it was clean up that top end, but we've just gone through it with a cloth and everything and wiped out all the stuff inside. And again, just wire brushed it on the outside, makes it look a bit pretty. Got all the mixture needles freed up and polished up as well. The drain tap is also free now. Yeah, it's all looking pretty good. Got some new fibre washers there for when we put it back together, and also straightened out the choke lever here. We had all those off as well. They've been a bit of an experiment with a coat of clear lacquer on those with no paint, just to see if it stops the rust. So we're going to try and keep those actually clear with no paint on them, so hopefully the clear lacquer will stop them rusting. But yeah, that's about where we are at the moment with the engine. Some bits have been cleaned up, the brass stuff is cleaned up, that's all in the house. We can show that another time, because this video is probably getting a bit long now. So yeah, I haven't actually tested the spark on the magneto, but the coil is good, and Make Do Amend one did have it sparking not so long ago, so she should still be fine. All we've got to do is cut a length of HT lead for it, which we'll do once it's on the engine, so we can get the length of HT lead right. Yeah, that's where we are at the moment. A couple of bits painted up, and the actual main block still needing cleaning and painting. Okay, we have the Petta A barrel and cylinder head on the bench, and that received a coat of heatproof black brush on paint. I think it was Friday night, I think. So it's dried nicely and looks pretty good actually. We're trying some of this stuff at the moment. Heat resistant black paint, matte black, up to 600 degrees. It's for stoves and barbecues and things. Quite expensive stuff, but it does go a long way. Even in that little tin, I've barely used any coating the barrel head and the exhaust and manifold. So yeah, it's looking pretty good now. All we've got to do to the barrel is drill this sheared off bolt out and tap that. I got a cheapy metric tap set a couple of days back that we're going to try out. Just metric, I mean all the Imperial and Whitworth stuff is all rather expensive, the taps for those. So we're just going to tap that to metric size. It's not important, it just holds the back of the cowling in place on the engine. Anyway, so the barrel is pretty much done. All we've got to do again is do the valves again. The inlet valve is pretty good, that probably doesn't need any more work, but the exhaust valve is rather badly pitted. It's going to take a while to get a really nice finish on that. But yeah, it's not looking too bad now. We haven't got much further to go regarding the barrel. We also talked about the piston rings. They're not as good as I'd hoped they'd be. The actual gap in the bore is pretty substantial. So you can see the gap there is pretty big. My feeler gauges I haven't actually got at the moment. I think they're in the toolbox. But anyway, yeah, that gap is pretty massive. Okay, well, this is a 30 thou feeler gauge, which goes into the compression rings pretty easily, and I believe the oil ring is even worse. Okay, we finally have our reading on the oil scraper ring, and yeah, it's pretty big. That is 75 thou. Yep, that's the gap. So we've had to double up quite a lot of feeler gauges in there to get the gap. And you see the amount missing. That's how big the gap is in the piston ring by the amount missing in the old feeler gauge. Yes, quite the gap. Pretty big. Pretty big indeed. So I might be able to get away with the compression rings with a 30 thou gap, but the oil scraper ring is going to cause a lot of issues with the engine smoking, I should imagine. I should imagine she was smoking pretty badly in her final hours of running. Yes, pretty bad. So we're definitely going to need a new oil scraper ring. But the compression rings, I don't know, we might get away with those. Yeah, that's where we're at with the old Petter. We've got some pretty big ring gaps, but some stuff has finally been painted. The barrel, painting the barrel and the cylinder head was by far always going to be the most horrible job. Clearing out all the years and years of crap that builds up in the fins. Got to scrape that away and then wash it with either some paraffin or some white spirit, let that dry and then give it a coat of paint. But I'd definitely recommend something like this, a brush paint for this sort of job. The spray ones are a bit fiddly to get it in all the right places, but with a nice thin brush you can get a nice good coat. And this stuff dries pretty well as well. It doesn't dry completely like light matte black, it dries a nice dark matte black, which is pretty nice actually. Prefer it to what I've used before. Anyway, that's where we are with the old Petter at the moment. Okay, it's been a little bit of a while since we had an update on the old Petter A-Type, and she's progressing quite nicely now. We had a little crank up with mate doing Ren 1, and he brought over a few of the last parts that I needed really to get the engine finished. So we have some of those bits here. Got the magneto bracket there, just need one of those, and also the Petrobras plaque for the trolley, and we also picked up a few other little things, and the two spec plates for the engine. That's actually for a Petter A1, and I decided to persevere with the engine's originals and continue cleaning them up, and I finally got this top one looking nice, as is the actual engine's original spec plate, which is pretty good. And the cowling, the top section of the cowling, is the actual only bit on the engine that's finished at the moment. So this has had a good few coats of the gloss black now. That'll just be polished up before it goes on to get the fingerprints and stuff off of it. But yeah, that looks really good. Quite happy with that. And the black makes these old spec plates stand out really nicely. And we've opted for some big dome-topped flathead bolts, which finish it off nicely. So that's a matching 6 of those, which are bolted to the top cowling. So if we ever need to remove these tags, it'll be a hell of a lot easier because we won't have to drill out any rivets. So I don't know if Mate Doing Med 1 wants those back. You're more than welcome to them if you want. If not, I shall just pin them to the back of my shed door. We'll see. A couple of other bits. We needed a oil control ring for the engine. Yep, this is the one I got from Make Do and Mend One just a couple of days ago. That is a used ring, but it is a lot better than the one I actually have at the moment. Even if we just get that one, even uncompressed, I bet it has a much smaller gap. Yeah, even when it's not compressed in the bore, it has a much smaller gap than this other ring. This oil control ring is the engine's original, 75 thou gap on that ring, and this one has a much smaller gap. I would say about 30 thousandths of an inch, which is much better, much more reasonable. So we should get nice oil control with that. The engine should get its piston lubricated nicely whilst not puffing out loads of blue smoke. That should be fine. The compression rings are usable. We did also look at a piston, a couple of pistons actually, as this one is quite scored, but it's all below the ring, so it should be fine. But we actually had a look at a couple of pistons, and interestingly enough, although they've all come from Petter A types, all standard bore, 1.5 horsepower, 700 RPM engines, the actual spare pistons that Make Do and Mend One had were actually considerably bigger than this piston. A lot bigger, I would say, by it had to be nearly a good 5, maybe even 10 mil bigger. So yeah, that was quite interesting. Haven't seen that before. And one other thing we got as well is another connecting rod, just as a spare for the engine as well. And even that connecting rod is also slightly different. The connecting rod from my engine is actually a bit taller than that other connecting rod. So very strange. Don't know what that means about this old Petter A. Slightly different to others by the looks of it. Let's see what other people have to say about that on the forum tonight when I update it. We've also cleaned up a few bits. That's the petrol filler cap there has been cleaned up nicely. The oil filler cap cleaned up rather nicely. Got its original brass plate on here which tells you which oil to use and that it needs to be changed every 300 hours. Top section of the old governor arm, that cleaned up pretty nicely as well. Terrible casting on that governor arm though, but she does the job. And that brings me on nicely to another bit that Make Do and Mend One kindly made up for me, which is a new governor arm. I do actually have the engine's original, which is somewhere in this box of stuff somewhere. Apparently not. I don't know where that's gone. Anyway, I do have the engine's original. It is here somewhere. But it was just terribly rusty and terribly bent out of shape. So Make Do and Mend One kindly made me up this new governor rod, which is absolutely great. That should get the engine's speed right down and keep it well governed. I was just foreseeing a load of trouble fitting the old one, which was really bent out of shape. So we've got some small bolts to do up on this one as opposed to split pins. These are hard to drill out. I could have a go if I wanted to, but I'm going to leave these. So we just have a small washer and then a bolt here, and we could actually pack that with more washers if need be to get a closer fit, but I think that should be fine. That should be no problem at all. Obviously, like I said, we've got the brass Petter plaque as well. Can't seem to get these on eBay at the moment, so again, thanks to Make Do and Mend One for that one. Yeah, we've now got everything we need. I think everything we need to get the engine going. We've got a complete brand new gasket set, a new head gasket. Yeah, we should be good to go soon. Just got to finish off painting. The actual block down here has had a coat of a red oxide primer, and the back and sides of this cowling have had a coat of paint. Still tacky because it's really cold. I painted these at the same time, but I was able to take this in the house after it had gone tacky, so it dried quicker, and this is still drying. That's only had the one coat anyway, and we've also got to finish off sanding around the front, straighten out this bit of the cowling at the top here, make sure it's not rubbing on the flywheel anywhere, and then we can proceed. The old flywheel keys, we did have a go at getting those out. You see that one's pretty mushed up now, but they just won't budge at all, neither of them will. So we're going to leave those well alone now, and get you sick of faffing with the flywheel. So we're just going to leave those be. I've actually bashed this one in a little bit more now. It was sticking out quite a long way. After I couldn't get it out, I thought, well, I might as well do something with it, so I bashed it back in a little bit more, just so there's less protruding out from the actual crankshaft itself. A little less likely to get me trousers, or somebody to get their trousers caught on that. Yeah, but I think we're generally up to speed with the old Pet-A-Ray now. Still not 100% sure on its age. I think it's about a 1943 engine. So yeah, she's coming along nicely. Oh yeah, and obviously we've got the old fuel pipe up here with the tap on the end that cleaned up really nicely as well. We straightened that out. It was really bent up, but we've managed to get it nice and straight and flat. We just bend that accordingly when we're putting it back on the engine, so it fits nicely. Anyway, that's where we are with the old pair. She's not looking too bad now. We've got the exhaust valve still to grind in, the cylinder needs honing, the piston wants a little bit more cleaning up, and obviously the rings then need fitting back on it. We need to paint one of these mag clips, fit it to the magneto, paint the rest of the block, sand this lightly back, give that another couple of coats, same with the sump, and then it's basically a case of cleaning up all the fixtures and fittings. All the bolts need shining up, and then we can start making a trolley for it and finally get to the stage where we'll be getting closer to the first run. Yeah, it shouldn't be long off really. If I do a little bit every day, we should get there.